Well, first of all, I'd like to, on behalf of Abax and on behalf of Fred from ALC, say a warm welcome to you all this afternoon. The Vice Prime Minister, Honorable Xavier-Luc Duval, who had initially had planned to be with us this afternoon, apologizes for not being able to come because I think he has some other engagements, very important engagements this afternoon. So we are very happy to have a speaker today of the caliber of Fred Swaniker. And on behalf of Abax, I would also like to welcome Dr. Nokwe, from the South African High Commission. Thank you so much. She's very loyal to Abax series. I think she's been with us for almost all of our Abax Forum editions. Thank you so much. I would also like to acknowledge the presence with us today of Mrs. Gura, the Permanent Secretary from the Ministry of Education. Thank you so much for being with us. And distinguished guests, I would now like to invite Richard, our CEO, to officially declare this Abax Forum series open and have a good time. I would also like to greet some of the students from the ALC who are here. Thank you so much for being with us and wish you all a great time. Richard, please.
Thanks. Thank you, Gilbert. Welcome everyone, welcome everybody to this edition of Abax Forum. We are very happy to see you here coming to listen to Fred Swaniker. Gilbert will talk a little bit about Fred and then he will speak about all that he's doing. But just a small word about what we do and why we do these Abax Forums. In fact, as you may know, Abax is effectively one of the management companies in Mauritius. We operate in the global business sector, which is sometimes and very often mistakenly called offshore. And I want to stress that precisely what we're going to see today from Fred is testimony that we are not offshore and we are right onshore and we are effectively doing business in Mauritius. And Fred will explain to you as well how we're going to do business from Mauritius, rather than just money flowing through, as many people tend to think. And one of the objectives of the Abax Forum is precisely to show that most of our clients, if not all, do have confidence in Mauritius to be that place where they can establish the business for different reasons, and not only because of financial reasons, financial services, or tax reasons. Tax today, in the world of international structuring, is only part of the story. And people like Fred and other clients that we have are here a vivid example of this. And the battle or the advocacy that we want to push is effectively to make everybody in this country understand that if we really think about integrating the global business sector with the domestic economy, then there's wonders that can happen in Mauritius. Because Mauritius is effectively a place where many different things can be added to the financial services sector to add value to the businesses of our clients. They can establish their headquarters here. They can use technology in Mauritius. Fred is employing Mauritians, is looking for Mauritius students to join. He will tell you more about it. So this is effectively the main point of advocacy that we want to push through Abax Forum. Our clients do real business here in this country, and we want to push the fact that if we are able to help integrate global business with domestic economy, then that can be a real pillar for the development of the country. First time I met Fred was 3 years ago. We were introduced by, I can't remember who, Fred, to be honest, and we met Fred for breakfast, and Fred started to explain to me what he was in Mauritius for. He was effectively preparing then the African Leadership Network gathering that was held in Le Saint-Géran and in some other hotels in September, I think, or November 2012, I guess, 2013. And as I was listening to Fred, I said, what is this guy talking about? He wants to build a new leadership of Africa? I mean, either he's serious or that's just a joke. I think I had not done my homework very well. And when I checked out who is Fred Swaniker, then I understood that he was a real visionaire. And this is, in fact, where the whole thing started. And then there was that African Leadership Network gathering, which was a fantastic gathering in Mauritius, where many of the leaders of Africa were members of African Leadership Network, came to Mauritius for that gathering. And since then, we have interacted with Fred many times, and he has decided to set up the African Leadership College in Mauritius as the first campus of a grand project. I'll leave it to him to explain more about it. Thank you very much for being here, and I'll hand over to Gilbert, who will introduce Fred. Thank you.
Merci. Thank you, Richard. Well, Fred is deeply passionate about Africa, and he believes that the missing ingredient on the continent is good leadership. In line with this, he has successfully founded 3 organizations that aim to catalyze a new generation of ethical, entrepreneurial African leaders. The African Leadership Academy, the African Leadership Network, and African Leadership University. By 2060, these 3 organizations expect to produce over 3 million transformative leaders for the African continent. In recognition of his work in developing Africa's future leaders, Fred was selected as one of 115 young leaders to meet US President Obama at the first ever President's Forum for Young African Leaders, which was held at the White House in 2010. He has been recognized as a global young leader by the World Economic Forum and was listed by Forbes magazine among the top 10 young powermen in Africa in 2011. Fred was also recognized by Echoing Green as one of 15 best emerging social entrepreneurs in the world in 2006. He was a 2009 TED Fellow and is a fellow of the Aspen Institute's Global Leadership Network. Fred began his professional career as a consultant with McKinsey & Company, and he has an MBA from the Stanford Business School, where he was named an R.J. Miller Scholar, a distinction which is awarded only to the top 10% of each graduating class at this business school. He was born in Ghana, but has lived and he has worked in about 10 different African countries. Fred, I leave now the floor to you. So, thank you so much for being with us.
So, firstly, I'd like to extend also a warm welcome and thank you, Ambassador Nokwe, for joining us, and Mrs. Gura from the Ministry of Education, and all of you really for taking the time on a Wednesday afternoon to be with us this evening. I know many of you have potentially more interesting places to be with your families and so forth, so I appreciate you making the time to be with us this evening. I'd also like to thank Richard and Abax for hosting us so generously here for this forum. I thought I'd begin first by telling you a little bit about who I am and what I'm passionate about and really why I do what I do. As was mentioned, I'm originally from Ghana, but I'm now confused about where I'm from because I left the country when I was 4, and every 4 years of my life I moved to a new country in Africa. Gambia, then Botswana, then Zimbabwe, and then I lived in South Africa on and off for about almost 13 years. I've worked in Nigeria, I've worked in Tanzania, I've worked in Ghana, and now I'm living in Mauritius. So I don't know where I'm from. I really think of myself as an African. And so that's one of the things that I'm very, very passionate about, because if you're passionate about something, then you want to do your best to try and contribute to make that thing great. And that's one thing that that drives me. I love this continent. I think it's the most exciting place in the world to be. But I see we're not achieving our potential. And so what really drives me is I want to hold my head up high as an African. When I land in Heathrow Airport and they ask me, why are you coming here? And they give me a hard time because I'm an African. I want that to change. I want to be able to go there and they treat us with respect because we are actually a great continent. The second thing that I'm passionate about is education. I'm passionate about education because I've seen the impact that education can have in transforming societies. My family also I come from a family of educators. So my grandmother started a school in Ghana, and my grand-uncle started one of the most successful schools in Accra. My mother also started a school. So when I was about 18, we were living in Botswana at the time, and my dad had passed away. My mother had a good track record as a teacher in the town that we lived in Botswana. And so the parents came to her and they said, we want you to start a school for us. And she says, well, my husband has just died. I've got 4 children to look after. I can't quit my job and start a school. But the parents kept pushing. And so she eventually agreed to start a small study group in a small church with 5 children. And she had 2 teachers. And soon more parents brought the children, and they had grown to about 25 students. And by this time, I had finished my high school education. And I had 1 year to wait before I went to university. So my mother said, you're going to be the headmaster of the school, because she couldn't have time to run it. So she made me the headmaster of a school when I was 18. It was a very small project. There were 25 students, eventually grew to 50 students. But in that 1 year, I ran a school. I managed the teachers. I taught some of the students. And I was just amazed by the transformation that happened in that 1 year that I worked with these young people. And I went off to college, and that school that my mother started today is the top performing primary school in Botswana. For the last 15 years, it's always #1 the national exam in Botswana. So, and the final thing that I'm passionate about is leadership. I'm always fascinated by the impact that just 1 or 2 people can have in transforming a society. Whether it's in a micro level, like a family, or in a school, or in a community, or in a hospital, or at the national level, like in the president of a country or the CEO of a corporation. We know throughout history there are few people who can have a disproportionate impact on society. And in Africa, unfortunately, the leaders that we've had have, in many countries, not necessarily had the best interests of the people at heart, and haven't understood that leadership is actually about service. Service to the people that you are leading. And so we had been dealing with many of the symptoms of ineffective leadership in Africa. And not enough is being done to say, actually, how do we develop good leaders in the first place? Instead of just hoping that good leaders happen by accident, can we create a more systematic approach to developing our leaders? So in the spirit of that, over the last 13 years, I've established what is now called the African Leadership Group, which is made up of these 4 organizations that you see up here. And I'm going to talk primarily about African Leadership Unleashed, which is the parent institution for many universities that we're launching across Africa. And then we've got the African Leadership Academy, which is an institution that we started in South Africa, which is a pre-university program that develops young people into leadership positions all across the continent. We've been training people for the last 12 years. Then there's African Leadership Network, which Richard mentioned. It has about 2,000 leaders who are established leaders, 70% from the private sector, 30% from the public sector. And think of this almost like Africa's version of Davos. We bring together CEOs and senior leaders in government to connect with each other and facilitate Pan-African trade and investment and so forth. And then finally, Africa Advisory Group, which is a consulting firm that works with senior leaders to help them to build their teams, to find CEOs and CFOs, and to make those teams more effective. So today, we're going to focus on ALU, which is one of the main reasons why we've now moved to Mauritius. And so ALU is pioneering a fresh approach to university education in the 21st century. And we're offering undergraduate and postgraduate degrees in a unique and imaginative way. That's, in a nutshell, is really what we're trying to do. The big vision that we have is to establish 25 universities across Africa, and for each university campus to have 10,000 students. So at scale, we'll be educating 250,000 students at a time. And over the next 50 years, we see this creating 3 million leaders for the continent. I was inspired to start ALU after the work that we had done with the African Leadership Academy. African Leadership Academy is a 2-year program which selects young people from all across Africa. And over the years, we've had about 25,000 people apply to this academy. And every year, we could only take 100 students. And so I really started to see that there was a lot of hunger for what we were offering. And thought, how do we give access to more people? We need to do this on a bigger scale. So that's one of the things that got me thinking about how do we actually provide access to more people. The second thing that I noticed through the African Leadership Academy is that after the students graduated, we would have to send 80% of them to study in universities in the US. So today, for example, we have almost 300 students studying in the US from the academy. We've got 12 at Yale University, we have 16 at Duke, we have 16 at Cornell University, and 6 at Stanford, 3 at Harvard, and so forth. And while that is nice, it bothered me as an African that if we're trying to create African leaders, why do we have to send them outside of Africa to further their education? Why don't we have our own African Harvard and Stanford and Yale and Princeton on the continent so that they can stay here? And the final thing that I was troubled about is if we're only producing 100 leaders a year from that academy, and then we send them back to Africa, to their countries, and to companies to try and create change, are they just going to be a drop in the ocean? Or, or who are they going to work with? They need no matter how good a leader you are, you need a team that you can work with. So those are all this, what inspired me to say, how do we do this on a much larger scale? And so one thing I want to clarify is the difference between ALU and ALC. ALU is the big vision of what we're doing across Africa to open these 25 university campuses and so forth. In Mauritius, we're known as ALC, which is African Leadership College. And that's because the word university or anything that sounds like that, U, is a protected name in Mauritius. So I just want to clarify the difference when we talk about ALU versus ALC. So the progress for ALU, the big vision so far, is that we have opened a campus in Mauritius. Sorry, yes, we've opened one in Mauritius, which is ALC. And we have also recently opened another one in Rwanda, which is called African Leadership University Rwanda. And what we're doing from there initially is we're launching an MBA program. We've launched an MBA program, which I'll talk about a little bit later. And the government of Rwanda has given us accreditation to award our own degrees. And so we're fully registered as a university there, and we can award degrees and so forth. In Nigeria, the government has also awarded us about 100 hectares of land, and we're in the early stages of developing a campus there. But most of my presentation today, I'm really going to focus on ALC and what we've been doing and some of the exciting progress that we're seeing in this country so far, and that we're really grateful to be here. So why Mauritius? As we're looking at establishing a flagship campus for within this network of universities, there were a few things that impressed us about Mauritius. The first is the good governance and the political stability. When you compare this island to the rest of the continent, this is really a haven of good governance and stability, and compared to the rest of the continent. We wanted to go to a place where we knew there would be stable policies and political stability and so forth. And so that really attracted us. The second thing was infrastructure. Mauritius, compared to the rest of Africa, there's clean drinking water, there's internet access, there's running the electricity, and so many things that one would need to establish a world-class institution are here. Also, very easy to do business here. I was impressed that the Board of Investment, when I would come here exploring things, they would send a driver to pick me up and take me around and help me with my meetings in different places. I thought, wow, this is really a country that wants to attract investors to come and work here. And also the government obviously has a vision to establish Mauritius as an education hub. And we thought that was really visionary, and we wanted to contribute to that vision. And finally, we've also been very impressed with the education that we've been seeing even in the secondary schools here in Mauritius. At the academy in South Africa, we've been taking a few students from Mauritius to come and study there, and they've done exceptionally well. The current government as well, the minister, has come up with some very exciting policies, like the 9-year school project, which aims to really infuse entrepreneurial thinking into education at the early stages, and also to promote the education of the whole child beyond just academics, and really think about how do you think about the psychosocial development of a young person. And those are things that we think really resonate with what we're doing as ALC, and that we think would also provide us with some good Mauritian students to attend the university here. So let me share with you the progress that we've made so far. We received our accreditation as an institution to award degrees in conjunction with Glasgow Caledonian University, which is a partner that we're working with, and all of our students are going to be awarded degrees from them. Glasgow Caledonian University is one of the top 10 modern universities in Scotland, and we are partnering with them initially to offer 4 degrees. This accreditation was obtained in August, and our campus was inaugurated by the President of Ghana when he was here. Some of you may remember he was here on a state visit, together with Honorable Xavier Luc Duval, the Deputy Prime Minister. We have 180 students enrolled here already from almost 30 countries, and these are the students on the beautiful beach. This is in Tro Beach, I think, enjoying the country and really, really having a fantastic experience so far. So some of our students are here, and you'll get to hear from one of them shortly. We are now opened admissions for our second class of 180 that we expect to join us. So by this September, we'll be at 360, and the plan is to be at 1,000 by next September. This is we established our campus, and these are some of our learning spaces and also administrative spaces that we have. Student housing. Initially we didn't have the time to establish our own campus from scratch. So what we've done is we've rented out facilities. We rented 3 hotels in Grand Bay and 1 in Tro Beach, and our students are staying there. So this is some of the facilities. Now, one thing we're worried about is when the 180 students come here, are we going to have enough hotels in Grand Bay and Tro Beach that we can rent? But we're hoping to change that soon. We have 60 staff members. We came here with 40 people in June, and now we've grown to 60, including 12 from Mauritius. And one of the reasons that hopefully we'll be able to expand in next year is that we've just recently entered into a partnership with the Terra Group to build our first campus, which will be actually right in the Pamplemousse area as well. So hopefully by this June, we're going to begin construction with the aim to open next September with capacity for 1,000 students. Now, one thing that is important about this is that all of our universities that we're establishing across Africa are fully residential. So all the students have to live together. So even students who come from Mauritius who attend ALU will have to live in this campus. The vision for ALC is to have in Mauritius 1/3 of our students from this island, 1/3 to come from Africa, and 1/3 from all over the world, from China, USA, Europe, India, etc. So finally, I'll end by just talking about what makes us distinctive. The first thing that we really are focusing on is innovative teaching and learning. We've taken the time to really look around the world and understand the best practices in educating young people and in an innovative and engaging way. And we've tried to bring all of that together. And so if you attend a class, I invite many of you, all of you, to come and spend a few hours at ALC and attend a class. It'll be very different from what you've experienced. It'll be extremely engaging, a lot of fun, and you'll learn something from it. So let me know anytime you want to come and attend a class. The second thing you're doing is really we're focusing on developing skills that employers are looking for in addition to giving them degrees. So all of our students cover the basics. They get an accredited degree in conjunction with the British University, and that is the baseline that every single student has. On top of that, we believe that academic degrees only need to be linked with skills that employers are looking for. And one of the things that we've noticed, that if you look at the data around Africa, about 45% of university graduates come out and they can't get jobs. For example, in South Africa, there are about 800,000 job openings looking for university graduates. And there are 600,000 university graduates looking for jobs. which is a travesty because the skills that the universities have produced is not what the employers are looking for. So we spent time over the last 2 years engaging with employers all around Africa, all around the world, trying to understand what are the skills that they're looking for that are missing in the typical university graduates that they hire. And we found these 7 skills. Skills like leading others, so having empathy, having relationship building skills with people that they might work with in the workforce, collaboration skills, and so forth. Leading yourself, so self-awareness, proactivity, understanding your own emotions, and so forth. Entrepreneurial thinking, critical thinking, quantitative reasoning. How do you analyze data? How do you use it to make good decisions? How do you do modeling? Communication. How do you understand your audience? How do you write properly? How do you speak in public? And then finally, managing complex tasks. So when you're given as a young employee a complicated task to do, can you do it? Can you structure the problem? Do you understand how to break it into its component parts and manage it to completion? So we are focused on really ensuring that all of our students, no matter what their academic discipline is, come out with these skills that we think will make them much more employable. What we've also done is we're really trying to link in with the real world as much as possible to break the barriers between academic institutions and the real world. So our model works such that students spend every year 8 months on campus and 4 months with an employer. So by the time they graduate, they already would have had 1 year of work experience. And you go out and therefore you're much, much more employable. The MBA program that we've launched out of Rwanda, we're doing in conjunction with Wharton School of Business and Harvard Business School. And the way that program works is that we're selecting rising managers from all across Africa, and they don't have to leave their employment. Every 4 months, they'll come to Rwanda for 1 week, and during that 1 week, we'll fly in professors from Harvard and Wharton and so forth to give them in-person experience. And then when they go back, they're then taking online courses from Harvard Business School, and then they come back to Rwanda. Then the second quarter, they take online courses from Wharton, and then they take some classes that we have developed as ALU in Rwanda, which teach them about how do you do business in Africa and how do you lead ethically on the continent. And then the second year, we're partnered with McKinsey & Company, which, as you know, is the world's leading management consulting firm. And they've taken some of their own best practices in teaching, best practices in problem solving and leadership and management. And they've created a program that we are then able to infuse in the graduates of our MBA. So that's another example of how we're collaborating with employers to make sure that what we're doing is really relevant to the real world. We also really believe that learning should have a purpose. Education should not be just for education's sake, but it really should be to solve problems for society. So we've identified that Africa faces 7 grand challenges over the next 50 years. And that has 4 big opportunities that it needs to capture. And we're trying to get our students to say, don't just get a degree, but think about how you're going to apply the knowledge to solve one of these problems for Africa. For example, urbanization is one of the grand challenges that we face on the continent. Over the next 40 years, 800 million people are going to move into cities in Africa. And we don't have a plan for this. So this creates a lot of challenges, but on the other hand, there are opportunities, like real estate development, urban planning, and how do you think about creating smart cities using technology and so forth. Education is another big challenge we have. Infrastructure, healthcare, climate change, and so forth. And then there are big opportunities. These are things that we believe that Africa has a competitive advantage, but it hasn't actually captured them yet. So things like agriculture. How do we manage our resources better? Tourism. And so we want the challenge we give to all of our students is that they should graduate from this institution with a plan about how they're going to apply their knowledge in addressing one of these grand challenges for Africa. Entrepreneurial thinking is another thing that we infuse in all of our graduates. We don't think it's an option because too many young people graduate and are looking for a job. And we believe that if we're going to address the huge challenge of youth unemployment that we have on the continent, we shouldn't be producing more graduates who are going to go out and look for jobs. We should be creating graduates who are going to create their own jobs and are going to help to drive the growth of existing organizations with their entrepreneurial thinking. And in doing so, they're also going to help to drive economic growth for the whole continent. So all of our students are expected to get their hands dirty in launching enterprises on the campus, and they really get hands-on practice in being an entrepreneur, so that when they go out one day, they can either start their own venture or they can help to drive the growth of an existing venture. Finally, diversity. We're recruiting students from all across the continent, all around the world. It's been exciting to see that for the next class that we're bringing in this September, we already have applicants from Canada, from Bahamas, from India, from Nepal, from Azerbaijan. They're applying here. And it's very exciting to see that they like Mauritius as a location. But this is just some of the students from the 180 who are here. You can see the diversity that's represented. This was actually, was this the Diwali night? No? Oh, the opening ceremony, exactly, which we're doing again tomorrow, where all the students who arrived came out and introduced themselves in their national attire. And you can see we've got students from Morocco, from Tunisia, from Kenya, all over the place. So I'll end by playing a little video, which we made recently to capture the spirit of what we're doing. And then finally, we'll invite one of our students, Eric from Kenya, to share his perspective, and then we'll open up for questions. Is the video playing? Okay. In Africa, more than anywhere else in the world, the difference that just one good leader can make is much greater than anywhere else. Today, I'm announcing for the first time in public, we're building 25 brand new universities in Africa that are going to cultivate this next generation of African leaders.
ALU is a tertiary education institution that's looking to build these universities to deliver the most innovative and the world's best curriculum for tertiary education.
There's been a barrier between the world of academia and the world of work. And we're trying to break those barriers by bringing together an innovative program that combines world-class education with practical real-world experience.
ALU has a trimester system. The first 2 trimesters are spent on the campus. At the end of their second trimester, they all go into internships for a 3rd trimester.
By the time you graduate, you already got 1 year work experience under your belt.
We have the world's best employers partnering with us. We have Facebook, Google, IBM, McKinsey, BCG, Bain, Equity Bank, RMB, Nestle, Coca-Cola. Some of these employers are not only providing internships for our students, but also giving us feedback on our curriculum, as well as sponsoring some of our students, where they pay for the students' fees so that they can get the first right of refusal to hire the students that they sponsor.
Think of this as Africa's Ivy League. But instead of getting admitted because of your SAT scores, or because of how much money you have, or which family you come from, the main criteria for getting into this university will be what is your potential that you have for transforming Africa.
I expect to engage in a lot of projects, locally, regionally, and projects that can impact Africa as a whole before I can even graduate.
I just feel like it's a workplace more than like a classroom.
If I could go back 5 years down the line and I am a high school graduate and I'm trying to choose where to go, I would choose ALU because I know that at ALU I can meet other young Africans like me, and so I can have a network across Africa of friends, of collaborators.
Even though we all come from different backgrounds and different cultures, religions, I feel like we have lots of things in common. And the most important thing that we have in common is our love for Africa.
I'm excited about meeting young leaders, new people that we can share ideas with.
My classmates are super passionate and dedicated to changing the continent.
The staff, the students, everybody gets to sit together and like talk. Everybody cares about what we think.
We chose Mauritius as a first location for our university because it's one of the most stable countries, not just in Africa, but in the world. It has all the kind of things that would make a world-class institution, and it's one of the most beautiful countries in the world. I can't believe that part of getting a university education is not just about learning. It's about having the time of your life. And so when you come to Mauritius, it makes the student experience so much more enjoyable.
We are founders. We are the first set of students here. So it behoves on us to create the culture that will live on 50 years from now.
The students have access into building a university that they want, unlike any other university. Hence, I believe ALU was the perfect university for me.
ALU. Welcome to ALU.
Bienvenue à ALU.
Eric from Kenya, who's a student from ALC.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. My name is Eric Mangi. I'm a student at the African Leadership College, and I'm from Kenya. So first, it feels really nice to be on this island. The roads are really clean, and I mean, the beach is just, I cross the road and get to the ocean. It feels really nice to cycle around the island, and it's just a real nice feeling. But what feels even better is the fact that I wake up to a South African roommate and a Ghanaian housemate and an Ethiopian housemate, and the diversity is just on your face. It feels really, really nice. And this diversity is what I get to experience every single day at the African Leadership College. One, I get to respect and understand people from different cultures and with multiple personalities. And in just less than 3 months, because we got here in October, there's been real growth. The kind of atmosphere that's at the African Leadership College is one of genuine concern. And all the facilitators, all the students are after growth. And the growth is really, really, if I can say, tangible. I feel like I've grown from October since I got here till now, and the growth is still continuing. And I'm just thinking, if that happened in 3 months, what about the 3 years that, I'll still be here at the African Leadership College? What will happen? Of course, also the cuisine is just amazing. I love Mauritian cuisine. It feels really nice to just eat Mauritian food every single time. And I really love and appreciate Fred Swaniker and the whole team behind the African Leadership College for what really they are doing. I think the growth is there, and maybe what we can say is watch this space, because the African leaders who are in the making are really going to blow the minds of the whole world. And I can stand and attest to the fact that I'm in the process of being brewed, and I really, 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 really love the African Leadership College, genuinely. I've been to several institutions before, and the kind of learning at the African Leadership College is, we have a unique, I've not seen it anywhere in the world. I don't think any other university or institution has it. It's divided into 4 elements. One is self-learning, the other one is peer learning, the other one is discovery, and the last one is facilitated class sessions. But in all this, there's reflection. I literally take my time to think about everything that I've studied, everything that I've learned on my own, everything that I've learned from my peers, and this is really, really amazing. Well, in the previous institutions, and I'm not sorry to say, I was just going to class, get the notes from the lecturer, and pass my exams so that I just finished with the unit. But now, I feel a real desire to study and to learn what I'm being taught. So what's really amazing is that this first year, I just learned soft skills. I'm learning entrepreneurial leadership. I'm learning data and decisions. I'm learning projects. We did a project with the IBM company, and it's real. Like, we worked with a real project manager from New York, and you have to deliver things to him. So it feels really nice because the growth and the environment is really, really there for me. So I'm proud and really happy to be at the African Leadership College here in Mauritius.
Thank you so much, Eric. Well, it's time for question time now, and we invite questions from the floor. We have 2 microphones which will be going around. So Fred will take any questions from the floor. Yes, please.
Hello, Bertrand Moijon from HEC Paris. I just wanted to raise a question about the kind of degree you deliver here. Are the degree from Glasgow University, and what is the role of Harvard and Stanford in delivering the degree?
Certainly. So there's the degree that we are offering here is with Glasgow University, only in Mauritius. Initially, there are 4 programs that we're offering. One is a BSc Honors in Computing, and then we're doing one in Applied Psychology, one in Business Management, and then one in Social Sciences. And we're beginning the process of accreditation to offer more degrees. We hope to offer engineering programs, and then some programs in healthcare, sciences, and so forth. But those we need to go through the accreditation process before we can offer them. What we're doing with Harvard and Wharton is through Rwanda, not here in Mauritius. It's the MBA program, which is a postgraduate degree that we are awarding as ALU in Rwanda. And we've partnered with Harvard and Wharton and McKinsey and ourselves to create a unique MBA program that is designed for Africa, which aims to give people a Pan-African network where all of our, we're bringing people together from the whole continent. And secondly, it aims to develop more explicit their leadership skills. So throughout the 2-year program, we've taken a very explicit approach to saying, how do we work with these rising executives to develop their leadership skills in a tangible way? And then finally, we're bringing together and exposing them to the global, curriculum from these great universities in developing their business skills as well. So that program, we're selecting the first class to start in Rwanda this September.
Okay, thanks, Fred. And I just forgot to congratulate you because it's a really amazing project you have here.
Thank you.
Congratulations. That's very interesting.
Thank you.
Fred, I have one question. Because I know that you mentioned you want to have 1/3 of the students from Mauritius, and that you want to have by next year 1,000 students at ALC. How do you see that, recruiting 300 students from Mauritius? How do you go about doing that?
Well, so we already have 180 students, none of which come from Mauritius. And by September, we'll be at 360. So we're finding, because of the work we've done with the African Leadership Academy in South Africa, we have networks with about 50 schools, 5,000 schools across Africa in 48 countries. They've seen the caliber of the education we've given them there, and that's given them access to great universities and so forth. So getting students to come from all over Africa to this institution is not a problem. We had 6,000 applications for this first class of 180 students in about 60 days. So the challenge we have is to get Mauritian students to learn more about us and to join this movement that is, aims to develop better leadership for Africa. So we're beginning now the process of advertising and recruiting in Mauritius. We couldn't do it before because we were not accredited in Mauritius, so that's why there was no one in the first class. But now that we're accredited in Mauritius, we can admit students for the second class. So for this September, we need 60 Mauritians out of the 180. So that's our goal for this year. Then, by the time we get to the 1,000 next year, we're growing because the 360 will be here already. So now we're going to add 640. And within that, we then need about 200 Mauritians. So the goal is 60 this year. And then hopefully those 60 will have such a great experience that then we'll get the 200 next year. And then we grow from there. So, we would love your advice and around how do we make this known in Mauritius. We'd love for you to share this opportunity with young people all across and schools around the country. But most importantly, we invite you to come and visit and see this institution in action, because that's the most tangible way to really understand what we're doing and sit on the class and realize how different this is from traditional university education and how it's producing skills that we think will really prepare people better for the 21st century. And we need Mauritians. We think that this could help really bridge the gap and to help to bring Mauritius together to the continent of Africa by producing future Mauritian leaders who have relationships with their peers from all across the continent and who have an understanding of the continent. Some of the partners that we have, the employer partnerships that are offering internships. Some Mauritian students might be able to go and do work in different parts of the continent and so forth. So that, because as Mauritius is trying to position itself as the gateway to Africa, it would be good to have a generation of Mauritians who have been educated with their peers from the continent who can really help to drive those links between Africa and the continent. So we'd love for your help in really getting Mauritian students to understand what's going on.
Fred, if you have so many applicants, what is the process? How do you actually select the happy few that get to go to ALU?
That's a great question. We have certain criteria that we're looking for that we believe makes great leaders. So one of the criteria is we look at their passion, because we believe that people who drive change very much are driven by passion. They're passionate about something, and it could be healthcare, it could be education, it could be, technology, whatever. But the people who really change the world are driven by passion, and so we try and look for that. What is this young person really passionate about, and how do they manifest that? We also look at leadership potential. So what have you already done in some small way, whether it's in your community or in your school or in whatever setting? Have you started a project? Have you started invented something or come up with an idea that gives us this sense that, okay, you have this innovative, creative spirit. We're also looking for collaboration, people who are collaborative, because the leaders of the 21st century need to be able to work well in teams. No one leads by themselves. And so we're looking for people who have that collaborative spirit and understand and can work with others. Because also a lot of the learning model at ALC involves peers working together in teams and really helping each other to learn and so forth. So we want to make sure that that's there. Finally, obviously, we're looking for your academic potential. You need to have the intellectual ability to succeed in this very competitive environment. So, and we look at all those skills. We also look at your entrepreneurial spirit and your ability to think innovatively, because we are trying to create game changers. So it's a holistic approach that we consider, and in doing that, then we find people that we think are really distinctive. But it's grades are obviously very important because you have to meet the requirements of Glasgow Caledonian University to be able to get the degree. But we also, that's just the beginning. We then look at all these additional attributes.
Thank you, Fred. And I'd like to congratulate you for this initiative where you instigate passion and talent in the youth of tomorrow, but also for choosing Mauritius as a base to do all the courses. Just one comment and then one question. I think fundamentally one thing that is important for the business in Africa or the economic development is the ecosystem. And I think by having leaders that can work closely together, eventually the business development will happen because the two leaders having worked together and living together and learning together, that create the ecosystem where there's an emotional link between the two. Then the South-South collaboration will happen.
Yes.
And this is very key because very often you tend to link with university that you worked before and partners that you've trained before. But this is something very different where all the future leaders will connect with each other. And then the other question that I had is the element of research. Is any element of research that is done during the degree courses that you're providing?
Great question. We plan to do research in the future as we develop and build capacity ourselves. We're expecting initially the research that we'll be doing will be in areas that are related to those grand challenges and opportunities that I mentioned, where we think we can really distinguish ourselves as experts in the biggest problems that are going to face Africa over the next 50 years and the big opportunities that we face. So we're going to be developing that over time. But the way we also look at our research agenda is that one of the challenges with existing research universities is that research can be very expensive. If you look at the infrastructure you need to do scientific research, you need the cutting edge technology and all of these laboratory equipment and so forth, right? And yet all of that expenditure is on the burden of one university. And then the fees have to be quite high to cover some of those costs and so forth. So what we are planning to do is to create, once we have more university campuses around Africa, one central university which focuses a lot more on research and is therefore able to spread the cost of that research across the network of the 25 campuses that we are building. And you have this one center of excellence for African university research that is really researching to Africa's greatest challenges and greatest opportunities and coming up with innovative solutions, and then delivering that to our university campuses all across Africa. And therefore, we are spreading the cost of that research in a scalable way and still be able to provide affordable education, but in a world-class level. So that's our strategy, but obviously it's going to take a while to unfold, and so it doesn't exist today.
Fred, thank you very much for this brilliant presentation. I just regret I'm not younger. I would have joined ALU as a student. The one question with regards to the framework that you mentioned about Mauritius having a conducive framework that has attracted yourself and ALU to Mauritius. But what are the constraints that you face? Because I think it's good that you talk about the constraints. I presume it's not a perfect place, so you must have faced some constraints. And what could we do better, to address the framework and make it even better for people like yourself to come and invest and work and live in Mauritius?
The constraints. Well, I mean, I've done a little business all across Africa, and I can say that my experience in Mauritius compared to the rest of Africa has been almost close to perfect. Compared to the rest of Africa in doing business. So, I mean, this country is really worlds apart in terms of its willingness and interest in attracting foreign investors here and the facilitation that the board investment does and so forth to really try and attract people here. So, let me preface it by saying, what are some things that could be better? Well, maybe you could reduce the temperature sometimes. It's getting very hot these days. But no, I mean, on a serious note, I think that maybe a couple of things that might be constraining us. One is the flight connections. It's a bit complicated to travel to the rest of Africa from here, and when you're doing a Pan-African initiative, we find, for example, that we're incurring quite a bit of cost. It's much more expensive to send our recruiting team, for example, to different parts of Africa or to engage with employers that we are working with for internship placements and so forth. You have to go through at least one place in Africa to get, whether you're going through South Africa or Kenya. So we're paying almost for the cost of 2 tickets to go somewhere. So that's one thing that would be nice to have greater connectivity to various cities across Africa. And then also, I think the size of the market in Mauritius, it's a small population. And so therefore, if you think about, getting folks in. And then finally, I would say, talent, finding the skills that we need to work in our organizations, because we would love to have the majority of our, eventually, if this goes well and we continue our growth plan, we'll have 300 to 400 employees in Mauritius, and managing this enterprise all across the continent. We would love to have the majority of them be Mauritian, because as much as this is a beautiful island, we find that we can't keep bringing people from all around the world to come and work here. At some point, they'll want to go back to their home countries. And we want this institution to be here for the long haul, next 20, 30, 40 years. So we need to be able to attract people with a skill set that we think can really deliver on our vision. And one thing that hopefully will help is if we can attract Mauritian students into the institution, we can train them ourselves, and then we can hire them to work with us. And that way we can actually, find the skills. But those would be some of the constraints that I would say. But otherwise, it's been a real pleasure setting up here, and hope that will continue.
Can you tell us more about how are you going to work? Students will pay some fees, companies, they will support them. Can you tell us more about this? And then the second question about the country to target, because that's a very ambitious project with 25 countries. I was surprised when I saw Mauritius in the sense that there are good reasons to be here, like you mentioned, the infrastructure, the high quality secondary school, but at the same time there is an institute offer. There is a university or private universities, 10,000 even with 1/3 coming from Mauritius, it means 3,000 students from Mauritius, and that's very, very ambitious.
Yeah, so I think there's many questions there. One, in terms of the business model and then why Mauritius. The business model, the way we see it working is that eventually at scale, we would have about half of our students paying fees. And we plan to charge about $10,000 US for both tuition and accommodation. But within, and that would come from, say the African middle class, who would be expected to pay some of those fees. We also want 25% of our students to come from outside of Africa, from the USA, Europe, China, India. And those students will pay up to $20,000, which is much more affordable than what they're paying in the US, but we believe we're giving them comparable education. Then the revenue that we get from those students will allow us to fund some of the African students who can't afford the fees. And then finally, we also want to partner with various corporations to sponsor the students. Because the way our model works is that students spend every year 4 months with an employer. And we're finding that employers can sponsor a student, and then in exchange, the student will then work for them after they graduate. So that's another way we're looking at financing the education and making it work. And to your second question about the size of the market in Mauritius and why establishing it when there are other institutions and so forth. Yes, while there are other universities that are established here in Mauritius, remember that our market is not just Mauritius. So we established this really to be a global university that is, located here. So, we have, through the African Leadership Academy, as I mentioned, a brand with thousands of schools across Africa and, who have been, applying to that. So it's quite easy for us to attract top students from the continent to come and study here. The ambition of getting 1/3 of the students from Mauritius is obviously not something we expect to happen overnight. If you look at, I think the numbers I've seen is there are 15 to 20,000, graduates from high school every year in Mauritius. Remember, if we have 3,000 of them from Mauritius, it's a 3-year program. So we only need 1,000 every year to make 3,000 out of the full thing. So I've got to believe that we can find 1,000 exceptional Mauritian students out of the 15,000 that are graduating who can join us. And so that's our target. And remember, it's we'll get to that scale 5, 6, 7 years from now. So it's not immediate.
Hi, Fred. Thanks a lot for this presentation. And like Mayan said, I think we all wish we were still like 16 years old. I think ALU is a very good reflection of the story of the potential of Africa. In actual fact, you have waited for the whole world to learn what works, what doesn't work, and then you're picking the best of the best to actually run this. So congratulations. I think one question I had was, what drives what you do in which country at those universities in terms of the courses and the degrees that you're going to offer, and more particularly for Mauritius?
Okay, sure. It's run, eventually this is one brand, it's one university, which has multiple campuses. So a student, when we have this at scale, I'm painting the long-term vision, is that you would be able to apply and you'll say, my first choice campus is Morocco, second choice Mauritius, third choice is Tanzania. And you would then begin at one of the university campuses, and we hope that once we have multiple campuses, every student will have to go and spend at least 1 year on another country's campus. So as a result, our curriculum and offerings have to be quite standard across the continent so that you can move seamlessly from one place to another. And this is also one of the reasons that drives down our cost, if we're able to share our curriculum across different schools and so forth. So you might do your year 1 in Mauritius in engineering, year 2 in Morocco, and year 3 you graduate in Nigeria. And that's, but I'm painting the 15-year plan. It's not like that today because there's only Mauritius and Rwanda. So in terms of what drives the courses that we're offering and so forth, we're driven by demand and understanding, which is why we're really engaging very closely with employers to understand what are the needs of the employer. So for example, Swiss Reinsurance, obviously one of the largest reinsurance companies in the world, has approached us because they are finding that the employers the insurance companies that they insure across Africa are struggling to find actuaries. And so they've approached us to say, let's create a school of actuarial science for Africa, a school of excellence that will develop actuaries for the industry. And so we are looking to partner with them and with other employers in the insurance industry to create the school. And employers will provide three things. They will provide funding to establish the school and to sponsor some students to go there. Two, they'll provide their technical expertise. So they'll help us to design the curriculum. They'll come as faculty and guest lecturers and so forth to help, to actually, deliver cutting-edge and relevant education. And then the third thing they'll do is they'll provide internships and work experience for the students during those, 4-month periods. So at the end of the day, the industry has come together to create skills that they are looking for, and then there's a pool that they can then select from. We want to do the same with engineering as we launch it. Is let's find all the different organizations across Africa that are struggling to find good engineers and say, let's create an engineering school of excellence in the same way. You provide funding, you provide internships, you provide technical expertise to shape it. And so, whether it's supply chain management, we think FMCG companies are struggling to do that. We create a school around that. So we want to be responsive to the needs of employers and really saying, actually, we see our customer as employers. And we think too many universities today do not understand that actually is, we need to understand what the needs of your employers are and work with them to develop a solution that really meets their needs. Well, thank you very much for joining us this evening. And I end again by closing with a request that please come and visit us. We're located at the Beauplan Business Park. I'll give you my card if you're interested. I've got several colleagues at this table. Please meet them. And anytime you want to come and visit and attend a class or every Thursday evening we do something called assembly, which gives you a sense of what's going on in the institution. Come and see, because it really is the future of university education, and we're lucky in Africa in this way. There are many things that are sometimes disheartening to be an African. You look at all the warfare and challenges and Boko Haram and this, but every now and then there's some things that are great about being an African. One is the fact that we can look at all what has happened in the rest of the world and pick the best ideas and leave the things that haven't worked and leapfrog and create new things that are new models for the world. And we believe we're doing that with ALU and with ALC here in Mauritius. We really are seeing this as the university of the future for the 21st century, not just for Africa, but for the world. So we invite you to come and see it and really get the sense of what this future university looks like. Thank you.